Hello, guys, and welcome to another wonderful episode of Cook on the Sun podcast. I am your host, Malika Critchlow. Very, very blessed to be here today and happy to learn things together with you. Decide if we're going to take it, if we're going to leave it, if it resonates, if it don't resonate. Um, so happy to be here. This is like one of the things I enjoy most in life. And just grateful for the ability to do it for however long. Okay, so we were to start the introduction today. And I'm sorry about the glare on my glasses. I have been trying to reposition the computer in a way to avoid it. Turn on the light, turn off the light, um, face the outside, not face the outside. This seems to be the best way so far. And still, I'm fighting with it a lot less than I was, though, at the other angles. So I hope you guys had a really good holiday. If you celebrate Christmas, a good Christmas. I do celebrate Christmas. It's my favorite time of year. Well, I like fall, just period. I just like the fall time. October, November are like my favorite months for weather, but December is not bad. And I really love the light in December. Something about it is a little bit different. And I love the holidays. I love Christmas trees and Christmas lights and twinkles, and it just feels very, very magical to me and like whimsical. And I like all that imaginary stuff, right? So really love this time of year. And then, well, the new year, like, I mean, depending on what you believe, some people don't think the new year starts until like March. Um, Others I think have September, but the Gregorian calendar, which, you know, some people may not agree with, has that it starts in January. January is my birth month, and I really love that month of January. But anyway, so excited to see what the new year brings. 2025. 2024 was pretty much for me a year of a lot of inner work. Um, I think growth, connection, more connection with self, and by extension with others and my divine team, of understandings, seeing things from perspectives I hadn't before. I wouldn't say it was an easy year, but I am grateful for all I uncovered in that year, all I encountered, learned, explored, discovered, lost. And I would say it was an unexpected year. I don't think anything in the year 2024 was planned. It was a year of learning to trust and see what brings me the most joys, to see what the lessons were trying to tell me, to see what lessons were coming. Um, yeah. So it was an unexpected year, I think, for me. Nothing went according to plan, but I'm glad it didn't go according to plan because I don't think I would have been um I don't think I would have grown as much as I would have had it not. I don't think I would have been as secure in trusting the best to happen for me. I don't think I would have learned how to enjoy the space that I'm in. All of these lessons I am still learning. They are not complete, but they are um, more solid and there's more depth to them and more understanding of them. So 2025, 2025, I want to see how all I learned in 2024, how I engage with what comes, you know? So how all the things I learned in 2024 allow me to engage with what comes in 2025. Curious to see that. I have a few ideas of what I would like the year to be for me, or what I think the year is saying that it will be for me. Um, but truly, I was saying I had a conversation with my daughter, and she said she's just gonna let the year show her what it is. And I think that's pretty cool too. So although I have these ideas of what I think it will be, I guess trying to see if it is that, if it does show up as what I think it is, if my intuition is on point, or if it's not, it needs some more refining. Um, yeah. So yeah, I just where are you guys? How are you guys feeling? Do you guys even believe in the new year? I don't do new year as solutions. I don't do that. I kind of just have expectations or intentions for the year, hopes and wishes for the year, but um I don't have resolutions like I'm not going to eat this, so I'm going to exercise in this way, or I'm going to read this more or stuff. I don't do that. I just have like, I wish the year was more joy filled or more abundant and more love filled, more love connections, more um, learning things that I find interesting or um, um, more curiosity is major for me, so more satisfying my curiosities. More curiosities. But yeah, so that's where I'm at. So I will say, though, today felt a little dippy. So I have most days I idle at a certain level of contentedness or joy. Sometimes it spikes and I'm like, very merry, merry. Like the merriment is insane. Like I'm super, super happy. And then sometimes less so now, I have dips. Today was a little bit dippy, which is weird because I had a really nice night yesterday and a good day, and then a few dreams. And then I think the dreams were processing some stuff and healing some stuff. And so I woke up, I was feeling a little iffy. I felt like today was a day of uh processing stuff. That's probably difficult for me to process, but I couldn't identify like what it was. I just knew like I wasn't my usual, I was in my usual space. Like everything felt very meh, like blah. Anyway, I had to go to the hairdresser and then that helped because talking to people and when people don't have time to wallow. And then I came home and made a really good chicken salad sandwich with so good with cucumbers. And then and French bread. And I went to the park and I felt good and started taking down the Christmas lights and stuff. Not everything though, just a few things. I put stuff up in sections and I take down stuff in sections so I don't ever feel I don't like to feel overwhelmed. I don't like when I have a heavy load or a lot of things to do in one day. I like to do things in stages. I realize that. I mean, even with my learning, even with my progression with learning about the spiritual side or the energetic side or these esoteric things, I like to take it in stages of integration so that I'm not overwhelmed by it. It's not a lot all at once. So I realize that's my preference for experiencing life. I know other people experience like a lot more excitement and things all at once and roller coasters and all that stuff. Like I do not like roller coasters. So it's curious to me as I learn more about myself and how I do things and how I enjoy experiencing things, right? So, but yeah. Anyway, so that's that. That's the new year. That's what I'm dealing with right now. Um, Starting to feel a little bit better, kind of get back to my normal, optimal level. And I have some curious understandings of where I'm at to right now. I was listening to this thing and it said basically like, where am I in the process? It's like, how far do I still have to go, right? But it's a journey. So I don't think there's ever like a total end, but of course we reach different stages of it, right? Different places in the journey, different portals or which is rest stops and stuff like that. And um sort of a destination. We do have a destination. And then once we get there, then another destination appears. And then so the journey continues, right? So I was listening to something and basically, I think it was the Ann Tucker recording of the angels' messages. And they were basically saying, you ask yourself, where are you in this journey? How much longer? Why does it never come? I can relate to that so much. But anyway, for my dreams, and that sleep break time where some information comes in, I feel like I understood that a new level unlocked, but I don't know what that level is per se. I didn't even know how to explain it. It was just like an understanding that I'm in a new stage of something. I don't know if the stage is a harder stage. I don't think it's a harder stage. I just think it's something that probably would be, I'll get to stretch some more or play with what I've learned. So I'm curious to see how that reveals itself or when I get these like understandings, I like to see if it's true, if it plays out, if I see some form of confirmation of it, because I still am not sure, you know? Also, I know I was telling you guys last week that self-love is important. If you can get someone if you could figure out a way to understand your dreams, that helps. And you can just ask your divine team or your divine self to help you understand it better, or you can have a dream analyst or a book that you feel resonates with you, like the interpretations of the dream and stuff like that. And then I had mentioned finding joy in your everyday life, your daily life. Um, so as the world progresses and we are aware of what's going on, um, that we can still maintain our little own cocoon of joy. But I was going to mention something else and I forgot. I was just going to say something else oh, the mirror thoughts. So the other night, oh my God, this like around 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. The stuff that I thought I had gotten over with people I've known in my past came up again. I will say it came up again, and I was still bothered by it, but I didn't feel the intense feelings of it. It was like more of a mind thing and less emotional and body responses to it and more just the mind having these thoughts. And I was like, yo, I thought I processed this. Like, why am I still like upset about this stuff? Anyway, so I did, I hadn't done a mirror talk in a long time. I don't know if I think I have, but there's a lot of videos. I don't know if you ever saw it. But mirror talks help me. Like if I talk to myself in the mirror about where I'm at, what I'm dealing with, and how to process it and move through it, I find that the advice that I give myself is what I need in that time, right? So it's like an aspect of myself that is, I don't even know how to describe it, that is more wise response, but it's me. I don't know why the mirror talk works, but it does work. And then whatever I was bothered about, I was talking to myself about in the mirror, what happens is it's no longer, it's like forgotten, like it's removed from, like I clear it until I guess I'm supposed to see it again in another perspective. I don't know. But so yeah, so mirror talk. So, you know, self-love, your dreams, joy, and the mirror talks work for me. Some, people have aspects that the gift of like channeling and talking to their divine team directly. And sometimes, like if I ask a question, I get an understanding or had like conversations, like maybe twice in my sleep wake time, where it went back back and forth and they were responding, but it was like my voice responding. But that doesn't really happen like if I'm up and dealing with stuff, right? So, and although some people have that gift, I haven't mastered it yet, or it's not something I have right now. But the mirror talks really, really work for me. And I was struggling with these things that had happened in my past. And um the issues that I have with things that happen, I understand like intellectually like why it happened and where these people are in their own processes and their own self-defenses and how my own defense mechanisms triggered their defense mechanisms and how that played out and how it's not, you know, a thing where they're horrible people, right? And that's not all who they are. There's so many other aspects to them that is or quite beautiful and kind and loving, right? I just experienced that aspect and don't particularly care to engage again because I feel like the aspect that I experienced, um, like I don't feel like these people are sorry. Like they think they are justified in what occurred. And so the issue with engaging again is it will occur again, and that cycle will continue. And that cycle doesn't feel good for my own personal growth. So there's a lot of forgiveness and understanding on what occurred, but not wanting to engage with them. And so I feel guilty about not wanting to engage again because I don't feel, because, apologies never occurred or anything. I don't think I really want an apology. I see who they are in certain situations. And if those situations occur again, I don't want to be um, the receiver of that defense mechanism that they have. But I do feel sometimes bad about not wanting to engage, um, and still upset that I had to experience that aspect of their being. And so the mirror talk helped me with understanding where I am in my own process and allowing for me to be there and allowing for my upset to be valid and um, you know, for my hurt to be valid or not, fitting into their standards of, what's right and what's wrong, blah, 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 and or their value system. And basically was saying like, it's okay if you don't want to conform to their value system. It's okay if you don't want to experience that again as you are experiencing your own value system, which is way more freeing and less confined and structured and or as limited um, for you, for me, and that was okay, and but that I am progressing, and at some point maybe I will be able to engage and not be affected by their defense mechanisms as much, but that I have to honor where I am now and be honest about it in order to allow myself to strengthen and grow in the love for myself. So the conversation was pretty like this is a conversation I was having with myself in the mirror. So it's kind of cool. So I don't know if Mirror Talks, if you guys have used Mirror Talks or if it's something you want to try to see if it helps, if you're not able to access, like how some people can access like divine knowledge or intelligence. So it's a, it works for me. It's worked a few times. So I know it's something that I could use. Anyway, so let us start the introduction. We don't have no lights here. So we continue with this book, The Gospel of Mary Magdalene. Although historians of early the introduction, sorry, we had the introduction. We haven't started the chapters yet. These are written by academics, and academics like to share their thoughts. They love intellectual material, and so we are sharing. Okay. Okay. So all the historians of early Christianity now have many gospels in their catalogs. Those of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John remain the best known. For most churches, they are still the only ones authorized to communicate to us the echoes and interpretations of the events and teachings that took place in Galilee and Judea about 20 centuries ago. The recent discovery in 1945 of the Library of Nag Hammadi in Upper Egypt has enabled us to broaden our horizons and enrich our knowledge to certain aspects of Christianity that had previously been hidden or suppressed by the orthodoxies. The Gospels contained in the library were written in the Sahidic Coptic language. The word Copt comes from the Arabic quibt, Qibt, which in turn is a contraction of the Greek's Agupios, or Egypt. So we getting the whole breakdown here. Most of them are attributed to direct disciples of the Galilean Rabbi Yeshua, considered by some to be the Messiah foretold by Hebraic scriptures, by others as a prophet or a teacher, and by still others as the universal savior. No, my wish is everybody can experience unconditional love. I think it's really hard to be loved if you've never experienced unconditional love. I really wish for the whole world that everybody can experience it so they can know what it feels like in order, because once you experience it, I think you just want to be that. It feels so good that you just want to be that to others if you can. Today, we are able to study these other Gospels of Philip, Peter, Bartholomew, and most especially Thomas, right alongside those of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. As with some other Gospels that came later, it has been established that the Gospel of Thomas, Thomas being also the name of the evangelist of India, whose tomb is believed to be in Madras, contains certain logia or simple sayings that are likely to be older than the revisions of the canonical text and may have been skillfully used by the editors of the latter. Among these other gospels, which have recently become much better known, there's one that does not seem to have attracted the attention it deserves from specialists and is still practically unknown to the public at large. It is the Gospel of Mary, attributed to Miriam of Magdala, Mary Magdalene, because she was the first witness of the resurrection She was considered by the Apostle John as the founder of Christianity, long before Paul and his vision on the road to Damascus. By all apostolic accounts, Yeshua of Nazareth himself was certainly not a founder of any ism, nor of any institution. He was the annunciator, the witness, and some would go so far as to say the incarnation of the possible reign of the Spirit in the heart of the space-time, the manifestation of the infinite in the very heart of our finitude, the voice of the other within the speech of human beingness. That was really beautifully said. And I suspect that it feels true that that's what he was, based on my own experiences and dreams. I mean, Jesus, Jesus, my own experience with him is just pure love, like such love, such love, like just love and acceptance. He is a beautiful experience to experience. I don't know if you feel connected to him, but if you do, and you want to experience him in a way that's more than just reading in books and actually have a real life experience with that energy, I would just ask. I would just say, Jesus, if you hear me, can I experience your energy? Can you help me heal? Can you help with whatever you need help with? If you're scared, ask him to help with your fear, help relieve your fear. I've been scared before, and he has come through and said in my dreams, safe, safe. And I woke up feeling so safe. And it was like his words are more than just words. Like they change how you feel, how you think, your energy. It's just really beautiful. The other day I had a dream that I was extremely, like I was in the desert and barren. And I was extremely thirsty, like dry mouth, like I felt like I was all down my esophagus, down, like everything in me was just dry and barren. And this man who I realized is Jesus started talking to me, and my thirst was just filled. Like I was filled, but filled more than just physically filled, which was also filled. Like I was no longer thirsty. Like my thirst was quenched in the best way, not overfull, not not, you know, not too much water to quench my thirst, just enough. It was perfect, and I couldn't get enough. It was just wanting more and more and more and more and more. But like not just thirsty, not just like my thirst was quenched, but my hunger was filled. And there were little different layers of being that I cannot explain that was being fulfilled, that was being satisfied or satiated or nourished that I cannot explain, that I didn't even know um, was lacking. And this person just kept talking the most beautiful voice I have ever heard. I didn't even know voices could fill you, could quench your thirst, could touch so many layers of your aspect of your being. And he talked for me for so long, I still couldn't get enough. Then he stopped for like, it seemed like a little bit, and then he started again. I was just so happy he started to talk to me more and more and more and more and more. I don't know anything of what he said. I don't remember any of his words. I just remember the feeling of being thirsty and then being quenched in the most beautiful, perfect way of being hungry but filled in the most perfect way of having other aspects of my being in need of nourishment and it being nourished in the absolute perfect way, and the voice being the most beautiful, layered voice I have ever heard, but not remembering a thing he said, just enjoying what was being said. And this happened during a break between Soul Convergence 1 recordings before Soul Convergence 2 starts. I do think Jesus is one of my teachers, and he is the teacher. I enjoy his lessons. I never know when the lessons are going to come, or what he's going to teach. And I still don't know what he taught me then, but I know I'll never forget that experience in that dream, and I know it was real. Like I know it wasn't made up or fake. I have never experienced anything like that. But there's a lot of experiences I've had in my dreams that I've never experienced, with the Virgin Mary, with Mary Magdalene, and with Jesus before. Anyway, but just like if I ever call him when I'm in need or scared, oh, I want healing. He comes through. He comes through. And in some way, he lets me know that he's there. And I love the ways that he chooses to communicate because it's always not what I'm expecting, but I enjoy. So I don't know if you feel connected to him and you want to have your own experiences, but I think you can just ask. You can just ask and he'll come through. I think even before any of this esoteric stuff, I told you, like, I remember my daughter was like a year and the microwave was going to go on the fritz and I could not buy a new one. I remember saying, Jesus, please, I cannot, please fix this microwave. I cannot get a new one right now. And the microwave beeped right back on and was working fine. It worked good for another 6 months until I could get a new one with my tax return. So, and this was before, I would say this is the first miracle that I experienced myself. And to me, miracles are like everyday things that you need help with that happen, right? And I think it expands from there once you are able to acknowledge the little everyday things. And that was a miracle to me. It was my own personal miracle. So I always call on him when I need help, and he always helps. He always comes through. So I don't know if you feel connected to him because everybody has their own aspects that they feel, connected to. But Jesus has been major for me. I truly enjoy when he visits. I wish it was more. I think he's a teacher, and I don't know what else I have to learn, but I can. Anyway, so yeah, so this describes Jesus quite beautifully. And I think I want to read it again. Let me see. I think I have to turn on the light, guys, because I'm blind as a bat. Hold on 1 second. Okay, I'm back. I put on the light, so let's see how we make it. It looked like it. No, there's still some glare there. But anyway, I want to read this part about Jesus again. It's so beautiful. He was the annunciator, the witness, and some would go so far as to say the incarnation of the possible reign of the Spirit in the heart of this space-time, the manifestation of the infinite in the very heart of our finitude, the voice of the other within the speech of human beingness. The Gospel of Mary makes up the first part of the so-called Berlin Papyrus. This manuscript was acquired in Cairo by C. Reinhardt and has been preserved since 1896 in the Egyptology section of the National Museum of Berlin. It probably came from the area of Aachen, since it first appeared in an antique shop in that town. According to C. Schmidt, this copy was made in the early 5th century. The papyrological and papyrological analysis of the manuscript was done by W. C. Till following the work of C. Schmidt, and then corrected and completed by H. M. Schenk. The scribe wrote down 21, sorry. The scribe wrote down 21, 22, or 23 lines per page, with each line containing an average of 22 or 23 letters. Several leaves are missing from the document, pages 1 to 6 and 11 to 14. This renders its interpretation particularly difficult. Like the other writings in the Berlin Papyrus, and also like the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Mary is written in Sahidic Coptic with a number of dialectal borrowings. Several faulty transcriptions and other errors have been discerned in the writing. As to the dating of the original text upon which the copy was based, it is interesting to note that there exists a Greek fragment, the Rylands Papyrus 463, whose identity as the precursor of the Coptic text has been confirmed by Professor Carl Schmidt. This fragment comes from, I cannot pronounce this name. So Oxyrhynchus, Oxyrhynchus. I don't know what that is. And dates from the beginning of the 3rd century. The first edition of the Gospel of Mary, however, would likely be older than this. That is from sometime during the 2nd century. W.C. Till places it around the year 150. Therefore, it would seem like the canonical Gospels to be one of the founding or primitive texts of Christianity. If this is so, what is the reason for the general reticence about reading and discussing it? Today's reactions are essentially the same as those of Peter and Andrew themselves after they had listened to Miriam of Magdala. And this is a part of Mary's gospel. Then Andrew began to speak and said to his brothers, "Tell them, what do you think of these things she has been telling us? As for me, I do not believe that the teacher would speak like this. These ideas are too different from those we have known." And Peter added, "How is it possible that the teacher talked in this manner with a woman about secrets of which we ourselves are ignorant? Must we change our customs and listen to this woman? Did he really choose her and prefer her to us?" Mary 17, 9-20. The difficulty of acceptance of this text turns out to be one of the most interesting things about it. For this is a gospel that was at least inspired, if not literally written down, by a woman, Miriam of Magdala. Here she is, neither the sinful woman or the canonical gospels. Here she is, neither the sinful woman of the canonical gospels, nor is she the woman of more recent traditions, which confuse her sin with some sort of misuse of the lively power of her sexuality. Here she is, the intimate friend of Yeshua and the initiate who transmits his most subtle teachings. As even deeper difficulty to acceptance of the Gospel of Mary arises from the nature of its teachings, from the anthropology and the metaphysics that are implicit in it. This is not a dualistic anthropology, nor is it a metaphysics of being, with the essences to which we have become accustomed in Western philosophy. It is instead a fourfold anthropology and a metaphysics of the imaginal, whose keys the most liberated and informed minds of our era have just begun to rediscover. Miriam of Magdala. Among all the Gospels attributed to men, we have in the Gospel of Mary a text attributed to a woman, the one whom the other disciples acknowledge as having first seen the resurrected Christ. In the early centuries of Christian writings, there was scarcely a text to be found that did not mention her, sometimes to glorify her, other times in an attempt to minimize her importance. In addition to the gospel that is our concern here, two other writings also bear her name. The Questions of Mary mentioned by Epiphanes and the Birth of Mary, one passage of which is also mentioned by him. Miriam of Magdala assumes her full importance in the Questions of Mary. I've never heard of this book. Have you guys? The Questions of Mary? Let me go back and start the sentence over. Mary of Magdala assumes her full importance in the questions of Mary, yet the same document was also used as a model for a very different text by a later author. In the later work, the questions of Mary was rewritten and revised so as to take on a markedly dualistic and ascetic character, and the role of Mary somehow became strangely minimized and devalued. Although the original questions of Mary has been lost and is known only through the quotations given by Epiphanes, the dualistic redaction was developed into a long Coptic manuscript, which now resides in the British Library, editional 5114, known since the 18th century, and under the title of the Pistis Sophia. According to Michael Tardieu, editor of the Berlin Codex, the authors of the Gospel of Mary sought to take a position in the debate over the role of Miriam of Magdala. The canonical Gospels already contain hints of stories about this subject. Tardieu's further reflections on this are worth quoting at length. So he's going to quote this like 2 pages long of this Tardieu's comments. Here we go. All of these Gospels recognize that she had belonged to the group of women who had followed Jesus and that she had been present at his death on the cross, and she was the first to whom he appeared on the morning of the resurrection. It is probably due to the latter belief that she was considered a foremost among the women who followed Jesus. Also, it is said in the same verse of Mark as well as in Luke 8:3 that Jesus had driven 7 demons from her. This is a personality full of contrast, initially possessed by demons, then companion to Jesus and first witness of the resurrection. There is already plenty here to nourish the Christian imagination. The Mary Magdalene, who serves as the poetic foundation of the Gospel of Codex B, has become at once the confidant of Jesus, his interpreter, and his replacement. Jesus divulges words to her that are unknown to the other disciples. She occupies the place left vacant by him, and she communicates and explains the secrets that she received from him. This role as intermediary between Jesus and the other disciples is supported by a belief in Mary Magdalene as the companion of Jesus during his lifetime and as the first witness of the resurrection. It seems only natural that she who has followed Jesus everywhere and is there on Easter morning has been accorded special revelations. In the common belief of Jesus' followers, the post-resurrection time is one of decisive revelations, which include his communications of the mission given the disciples before his final departure. Because she's the first to have seen the Lord, John 20:18, her presence among the disciples listening to her report of his last words is an imposing theme, and one that is important for the Gospels of the post-resurrection. Some later authors were led to elaborate this theme in the form of a set of erotic mystical novels. Mary Magdalene is the confidant of Jesus because she is a sexual partner. Questions of Mary, in brackets. This is the origin of the Encretite reaction, which shows up in the exegetical and theological London manuscript, Pistis Sophia, where Mary Magdalene is only one of the protagonists in the general discussion that takes place between Jesus and the disciples. It is possible that the editor of Codex B, the Berlin Codex, by selecting precisely this gospel to bear the name of Mary, intended to take a stance in this debate and to encounter the excesses of the questions of Mary. But the authorship of the gospel is not important to the debate. The woman who is in the spotlight is the Mary Magdalene of the New Testament. The poetic details that are supplied, reports of visions, jealousy of the disciples, her tears, change nothing to the essential personality whom Syrian Palestinian Christianity credited as the ultimate confidant of Jesus and the revealer of the logia of the Master. But perhaps we could be more simple and direct than this and join with the Gospel of John 11:5 in saying that the Lord loved her as he loved his sister Martha, her brother Lazarus, and the other men and women who followed him, including Judas. Yeshua did not love John or Peter more than he loved Judas, but rather he loved each differently. He loved them all with a universal and unconditional love, and each of them in a unique, particular fashion. With regard to the unique and particular nature of his relationship with Mary Magdalene, the Gospel of Philip insists, for example, that Mary is the special companion of Jesus, koinonos, in brackets, koinonos. Yeshua invites us to experience our capacity for a divine love that includes all beings, even our enemies. But human love includes preferences, in other words, affinities, resonances, and intimacies that are not possible with everyone. The Lord loved Mary more than all the disciples and often used to kiss her on the mouth. When the others saw how he loved Mary, they said, "Why do you love her more than you love us?" The Savior answered them in this way, "How can it be that I do not love you as much as I love her?" Those who are unaware of the founding text of early Christianity are still shocked by the first sentence of this passage from the Gospel of Philip. It is not my intention to take sides in the polemics around this subject. Some partisans in this debate maintain that Jesus had an obligation to be married because he taught in synagogues. Jewish tradition considers an unmarried man to be either incomplete or disobedient toward God, and he is therefore not allowed to teach in synagogues. Even less could an unmarried man be a priest who is allowed to enter the holiest parts of the temple. But others retort that Jesus also kept company with John the Baptist and the Essenes, and that we know from the so-called Dead Sea Scrolls, not to be confused with the Nag Hammadi text, found in Qumran, that these Essenes were not only unmarried, but rejected women, sinners, and the weak. If we stick to the familiar Gospels, there is no indication that Yeshua was married, at least not in any formal sense of the word. Nevertheless, it is abundantly clear that he did not reject, but loved and welcomed women, sinners, and the weak. This in itself would have been a scandal not only for the Essenes, but also for the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and the Zealots, as well as for other sects of that era. The real question is not whether Yeshua was married, again, in the formal sense of the word, but why should that be so important? The interesting question is this. Was Yeshua fully human with a normal human sexuality that was capable of intimacy and preference? As the ancient proverb says, that which is not lived is not redeemed. If Yeshua considered as the Messiah of the Christ, from Greek Christos as a rendering of the Hebrew Messiah, did not live his sexuality, then sexuality would be unredeemed. In that case, he could not be a savior in the full sense of the word. This eventually led to the institution of a logic in Christianity that was more oriented to death than to life. This was especially the case in Western Roman Christianity. Jesus Christ did not live his sexuality, therefore sexuality is unredeemed, therefore sexuality is essentially a bad thing, therefore living your sexuality can be degrading and can make you guilty. He's saying what the Western Roman Christianity kind of indicates. This kind of guilt-ridden sexuality can make you can make us truly ill. Thus, the very origin of our life, in its physical sense, in the image of the Creator, is logically transformed into an instrument of death. Could it be that we Westerners, driven by our collective unconscious guilt, are still suffering the consequences of this logic today? The Gospel of Mary, like the Gospels of John and Philip, reminds us that Yeshua was capable of intimacy with a woman. This intimacy was not merely of the flesh, it was also emotional, intellectual, and spiritual. What is at stake here is total salvation, the liberation of a human being in his or her entirety through the imbuing of all dimensions of his being with consciousness and love. By invoking the realism of Yeshua's humanity in its sexual dimension, the Gospel of Mary in no way detracts from his spiritual and divine nature, the dimension of pneuma, Holy Spirit. Mark and Matthew devote more attention to his tears at the plight of Jerusalem and even his anguish and doubts when faced with death. This is yet another version of Yeshua's humanity, reflecting the belief that it is through such humanity that God is revealed. The Gospel of Mary, like the canonical Gospels, invites us to free ourselves from the dualism that tear us apart and render us demonic. But rather than denying the body or matter, it is by not allowing ourselves to become identified with and thus enslaved by any of these partial aspects of the real that they become sanctified and transfigured. We learn through our creative imagination to bring love to those regions where it is lacking, the blocked and stunted areas of our desire and intelligence, just as Miriam of Magdala did in following her beloved. If we wish to experience in our own lives the meaning of the wedding feast at Cana, we must imagine our mutual ignorance transformed through the unexpected word into a loving friendship that is sweeter and better tasting than the passion of infatuation. The gray waters of the everyday are changed into the spirituous wine of divine love. We ourselves must live the love-filled waking dream of the Magdalene, where death is met, passed through, and finally understood within the space of the resurrection. There's a heading now. The heading says, "Those who have ears, let them hear." Not only was Miriam of Magdala a woman, she was a woman who had access to the sacred knowledge. Given the era in which she lived, this is enough to have rendered her an outcast or a sinner in many eyes. She was outside the laws of society, where such knowledge is strictly the affair of men, where women were prohibited from studying the secrets of the Torah or even from learning to read its scripts. In her gospel, her way of speaking to the disciples is bound to irritate them. Who does she think she is? As if her special status as Yeshua's beloved is not enough. She goes so far as to appropriate his teachings, acting like some sort of initiate. She even uses the same words he had resorted to when faced with somewhat narrow and unprepared minds that could only recognize reality within a small field of their own perceptions. Those who have ears, let them hear. But while these words amount to an annoyance to the disciples, reminding them of their limits, of the limits of their understanding, the Gospel of Mary goes much deeper. It is witness to an altogether different mode of understanding that the masculine mind typically overlooks. A domain of prophetic or visionary knowledge though certainly not exclusive to women, definitely partakes of the feminine principle and is sometimes known as the angelic or Eastern dimension of human knowledge. The teacher is questioned on this subject by Miriam of Magdala. What is the organ of true vision? With what eyes is she able to behold the resurrection? The teacher's answer to this is clear. The resurrection can be seen neither with the eyes of the flesh nor with the eyes of the soul, psyche. The vision is no hallucination, nor is it any sort of fantasy linked to sensory, psychic, or mental stimulation. Furthermore, the gospel tells us that the resurrection is not to be categorized as a purely spiritual vision either. Rather, it is a vision of the new, a dimension often forgotten in our anthropologies. In the ancient world, the nous, N-O-U-S, was seen as the finest point of the soul, or as some might say today, the angel of the soul. It gives us access to the intermediate realm between the purely sensory and the purely spiritual, which Henry Corbin so eloquently names the imaginal. In between. Following Corbin further, we could say that in the Gospel of Mary, we are freed from the reductionist dilemma of thought versus extension, as well as from a cosmology and epistemology limited to either empirical observation or intellectual understanding. Between these two lies a vast intermediate realm of image and representation that is just as ontologically real as the worlds of sense and intellect. But this world requires a faculty of perception that is peculiar to it alone. This faculty has a cognitive function and a noetic value that are just as real and true as those pertaining to the worlds of sense perception and intellectual intuition. It is none other than the power of the creative imagination. Yet, we must be aware of confusing this faculty with the imagination as the word is ordinarily used. As Corbin says, the so-called modern mind has reduced this world to the realm of fantasy, a world of merely subjective beings and things. When Ernest Renan says that all of Christianity was born from the imagination of a woman, he is mistaken, for he is using the word imagination in its pejorative modern sense of something illusory. His thought is conditioned by an anthropology that is ignorant of the categories of the creative imagination in which ancient texts, including sacred scriptures, were conceived and written down. A living deity who wants to communicate thus necessitates an intermediate realm between God and human. Well, this guy is getting into it. He's getting into it in an intellectual sense. Oh, I started to enjoy this book. Let's see. A living deity who wants to communicate thus necessitates an intermediate realm between God and human, between the invisible and the visible, between the world of immaterial spirits and material bodies. It is in this intermediary imaginal realm that Miriam has her meetings with the resurrected Christ. Ah, as with the ancient prophets, God activates the necessary visionary imaginal forms in her so as to bring her to the divine. It is only in this sense that Christianity can indeed be said to be born from the imagination of a woman. Lord, I see you now in this vision. And the Lord answered, you are blessed, for the sight of me does not disturb you. Mary 10:12-15. Here we have gone beyond any metaphysical opposition of subject versus object. There can be no object without a subject who conceives and presents it, and there can be no subject who is not reacting to an object or environment perceived as external or other. We are the presence of a metaphysics of openness, a place of meeting, confrontation, and merging of subject and object known in their interdependence. Reality is neither objective nor subjective. It is an inclusive third state where the two imaginally become one. This reveals a field that has been little explored by contemporary philosophies, which still oscillate between the metaphysics of being and the otherness. The task of the next century will surely be one of engagement with this philosophy of openness, or the in-between realm. Philosophy will no longer seek its missing links in Greek or Semitic thought, but in this oriented synthesis, heretofore rejected by both sides, which begins to reveal itself in these early Christian texts. A true renewal of thinking about the source of New Testament writings must pass through the regeneration of the creative imagination, as Christian Jambet suggests in the following. For the creative imagination is not so named with some metaphorical intent, nor in a spirit of fiction, but in the full sense of the term. The imagination creates and is universal creation itself. Every reality is imaginal because it is able to present itself as a reality. To speak of the imaginal world is nothing less than to contemplate a metaphysics of being, where subject and object are born together in the same creative act of transcendental imagination. I think I have to stop there for today. Although we don't have much to go. Okay, I'll finish. Rather than speaking of the creative thought, we must henceforth speak of the creative imagination. Those who desire to understand nature and world events must learn to dream before learning to think. To dream your dreams. The language of sacred scriptures is one of images and symbols that belongs to the dreams more than to the concepts of the sciences. Christian Jambret goes on to say that reality is nature ordered by laws, which is what scientific discourse tells us. And this is the operation of the imagination which creates the discourse. I'm getting confused here. I don't know if anyone else is, but I'm getting lost a little bit in all these words. We can see that the mundus imaginalis should be approached with the same method in the same perspective. It is a mode of interlinking, of constructing a meaning, of interpreting the world, but it is far from being an attempt to say it all. On the contrary, what is constantly occurring is a saying of the one, but only on condition that it cannot be all. For the one is impossible to say. What is revealed is the failure of any reality to satisfy the desire of the one. The mundus imaginalis is the place where what is said is never the all, but the lack of it, the yearning for it. It is precisely here that desire becomes imagination. To this, I would also add transfiguration and resurrection. It is this realization and incarnation of her desire that Miriam of Magdala is trying to share with us. It is the creative imagination that this gospel wants to awaken in us, while not avoiding a confrontation with the reservations and objections of a philosophy of sense and reason, as presented by Peter and Andrew. The ethical consequences of such a practice of desire and imagination are clear and cannot fail to shock Yeshua's other disciples. There is no sin, it tells us. It is we who continually create sin with our sickly imagination and then invent laws to make it more comfortable. It is our imagination that needs to be healed. We are responsible for the world in which we live, since it is we who create it. Our lack of enlightened imagination encloses that faculty in a death orientation and imposes limits upon it wherein our feeling and intelligence have become arrested. These questions will be further explored in the commentary in the second part of this book. Let us note here that in this gospel attributed to Miriam of Magdala, The creative imagination to which she bears witness is the meeting place where the sensible and the supersensible divine descend together in a single dwelling. The imagination is the sympathetic resonance of the invisible and the visible. Oh man, I can't read anymore. I'm tired. Okay, so that's it for today. It was a lot of gobbledygook, but some good points stuck. I was able to understand some things. Some of it is very intellectual, but some of it is understandable. So I think what I am really curious about is that space between imagination and physicality. That space between spiritual being and physical being, but they're calling that imagination, creative space. It's not exactly how we call imagination, where things are being communicated. And that space being where a lot of sacred texts are written. I guess that's where they got all their understanding. But that they are, this space is being able to communicate or see in this space occurs with being given that sight. We don't all have it yet. I experience it in my dreams. I think we experience it in the dreams because the guards are probably down. I don't know. Possibly. Anyway, so that's it for today. I hope you love yourself. You take time with yourself. You're gentle with yourself. You try to understand and forgive and accept yourself in all the ways that you can. And we will chat again soon, probably sometime next week. If I don't do a podcast before the new year, Happy New Year to those that celebrate the new year now, or whenever you do. Wishing you more joy, more love, more peace, more serenity, more of the things that you enjoy that don't harm others, more understanding of yourself and what brings you the most enjoyment in this life. I wish you unconditional love in this new year in the way that you can best understand it and receive it. More connection with yourself. I don't know what else to wish you, but all the good things that could come to you. I wish it all for you and for myself. Yeah. All right, guys. Have a good evening and Happy New Year. Bye.